Alright, so if you thought you've come close to death, I need you to look at this guy.
This accident video illustrates the perils that the deck crews face. When a crewman forgets to duck as he passes in front of the jet's engine, the power is enough to suck him into the intake. Miraculously, the crew member is pulled free and survives with only minor injuries.
So this is some sort of like video just kind of like teach people on how dangerous it could be to be crew on like an aircraft carrier and all that with active naval aircraft and all sorts. This is an A6E tram. I think this is the A6E tram or SWIP, whatever. It's an A6. It's a ground strike oriented naval vehicle that we use to just pound the ever loving shit out of anything and everything we want. Now, while it doesn't have an afterburning engine, it has turbofan engines. Turbofan engines are just a series of multiple propeller blades compressed into very, very small, thin compartments in order to absolutely compress the ever-loving shit out of the air flowing through the intakes and pushing it out one end. While they can technically go into a what's called emergency power mode, which could be a style of which is an equivalent to afterburning for an afterburning jet engine. It's not afterburning, so it's we have two different things. We can have an afterburning turbofan, or we just have a regular turbofan. And there's ram, scram, all that. But let's just focus on what we have here. We have a turbofan, which is similar to the ones you're gonna find on airliners. You look at an airplane, a regular airliner airplane. You look at it and be like, man, it sucked to get sucked into that, because you imagine you die. Now, while we don't get a great visual of what exactly happened to our gentleman here after getting sucked into the A6E, I want to say something too. I feel like people completely underestimate how much power even idling these kind of engines have, because for it to fling him in like that, it almost is like spaghetti noodle slurps of him into the fucking intake just for him to just be like, okay, bye now. you know? That's horrifying. That's horrifying. And also people will look at airliners and be like, okay, yeah, that's gonna definitely pull me in. But then they'll look at like an F-16, F-15, A-6E, smaller fighters that have similar engines just scaled down, but to a greater power output. They'll be like, I think that I don't think I could get sucked into it. You need to understand if these engines are capable of pushing this heavy multi-ton piece of brick and metal. Well, not the A6E in particular because it's a subsonic aircraft, but let's just take any other afterburning turbofan engine. Before anybody starts correcting me on the fact that I keep saying turbofans, I understand we use afterburners on primary turbojets, but I'm going to say turbofans because we still use them on those. Not as commonly, though. These engines can push these multi-ton airframes at speeds past Mach, and sometimes further. You need to understand that just because it's smaller doesn't mean it's technically less scary than the one on like an A320. No, this thing is 70 times more scary, because if you so much as get near it when it decides to kind of push its throttle power, and just in case the pilot needed to do that for some reason, you better stay the fuck out of the way. Or you're going to be like the noodle when I'm trying to scrape the very bottom of my ramen bowl. Just trying to you don't want to be in the line of fire. It is a horrifying reality, as we just saw here on an A6E, which doesn't even have that much power as compared to, say, an F-15, F-16, F-22. Jesus fuck, let's take massive engines like the Hustler, the supersonic bomber with like 5 fucking engines. You would be like turned into fucking like ropa vieja by the time you fucking hit the intake. And to kind of put this in perspective, if no, this won't really count towards like engines that powered the SR-71 Blackbird and all those, because those are Scram and Ramjet engines, and those don't have any technical moving those technically don't have any moving components, minus the fact that they have what's called airflow control nozzles, which can control the amount of air coming through. And the reason they would do that is because the more you can make that air tighter and tighter and tighter still running through that, you get a cleaner, stronger burn, therefore giving you more thrust. If we can decrease the surface, if we can decrease the entry of the amount of air flowing through, but still keep the same amount of pressure, we have a very, 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 very focused amount of jet stream air coming through that if we ignite with fuel, it is going to push our plane even faster. Jet and Scram and Ramjet systems are very scary because they in theory, yes, could suck you in because it's accelerating with the air. The idea of it is think of like a rope. If I pull the rope hard enough, the rest of the rope will kind of come to me. And if I pull it so strong, I could have the whole rope to me. A scram and ramjet are kind of similar in that they'll use the air themselves, the air itself, to accelerate more air into the intake. But itself has no moving components. It needs to work at Mach 5 and all that bullshit, hypersonic speeds. So that's not necessarily a circumstance here. But if you were thrown into the intake of a scram and or ramjet, the issue is you're not gonna be sucked in. It's more so you're gonna be cut like a fucking just into like segments. You'll hit the air intake, get cut into like fifths, and then go right out the back because then you get ignited by the engines. In case you weren't too afraid of aircraft engines, next time you see one, maybe look at it from a little bit further so you don't end up like this guy. Because I'm sure he's alive because it like sucked him in head first. And what probably happened is that he got sucked in. The helmet took the brunt of it. The blades probably chopped it the fuck up, and he probably got a minor concussion. But it damaged the turbofans to a point where the engine itself just seized up. And surprisingly enough, these engines, as powerful as they are, they're also very sensitive. Even the smallest deviation on a fan blade can completely ruin the entire engine's performance. So a whole helmet of a fucking dude getting sucked in at, let's say, 60 miles an hour is also horrifying. I mean, you can see right after he enters it, the fans themselves blow out in the back with fire. Usually these things can seize up if a single blade seizes up. There's no operating with one slightly damaged or anything like that you can get by with like piston engines back that in propellers in World War II. This is not gonna work if sorry, you farted a little too hard into the intake. So yeah, that's about it. Don't stand in front of air intakes. Deuces.